Hey everybody. So that was fast. I made a video yesterday afternoon about an important court case that I've been keeping my eye on in California. And then right after I published the video, we got a decision on it. So, spoiler alert, despite the fact that the Trump administration won the case, I'm actually very happy with what the judges decided about the central issue that I was warning about, the thing that I care about most, that I warned about in yesterday's video. So I want to look at that. It's this case where California is suing the Trump administration to take back control of the California National Guard from Donald Trump. Trump seized control of the California National Guard under a law that allows a president to do that if one of three conditions is met. The three legal requirements for federalizing the National Guard are 1, invasion by a foreign nation, 2, rebellion or danger of rebellion against U.S. authority, or 3, the inability of regular federal forces to execute the laws. So on the surface, this lawsuit was simply about whether Trump could prove that one of those standards was met. You don't need to meet all of them, just any one of those three standards would need to be met during this recent unrest in Los Angeles. And what concerned me, the reason that I said that this case was an important one to watch, was one of the arguments that the Trump administration put forward in the case. Beyond arguing the merits of those three criteria, Trump's team argued that his decision must be final. And this was the concerning thing. They argued that the president alone has the power to determine what words like rebellion and invasion mean, and that it's unlawful to even take him to court to make him prove that the situation fits one of those criteria. And that argument, if the court had affirmed that, and if the Supreme Court had upheld it eventually, that would have been a huge blow to the rule of law. As I mentioned yesterday, one of the judges asked the Trump administration's lawyer, suppose the president simply invokes the statute, gives no reasons for doing it, provides no facts, and there's nothing which would appear to a court to justify it. Would it still be true that the court has no role at all in determining whether the president correctly invoked the statute? And the response from the Trump lawyer was chilling. He said, yes, that is our position. If the statute's unreviewable, it's unreviewable. So the good news from the appeals court decision yesterday is that they explicitly rejected that argument. And that's why I cared about this case. So yeah, they decided in favor of Trump, but they did it based on the clear meaning of the law. And they rejected this power play that Trump's people tried. So remember, like I said, only one of the three criteria need to be in place for Trump to federalize the state's National Guard. And the appeals court ruled that criterion number 3 applied, the inability of federal forces to execute the laws. And they explain why they decided that. They said they do have the power to review a president's decision. They hold on to that power, but they want to give the president high deference in making that decision. They wrote, under a highly deferential standard of review, defendants have presented facts to allow us to conclude that the president had a colorable basis for invoking the statute. They presented evidence detailed above of protesters' interference with the ability of federal officers to execute the laws. So that's what they hung it on. And I'm torn on this highly deferential decision, but I do understand that. Back in the day, I'd probably have liked that decision to give high deference to the president on matters of national security, because I've always thought, in the past especially, that it's important to have a chief executive that can make decisions in times of crisis without having a microscope put on those decisions at every turn. Unfortunately, that was back when I sort of naively trusted presidents of either party to generally act in the national interest. And that's just all changed under Trump. So now I'm kind of reflexively opposed to giving any president deference on anything. But that is why I think we have to look at these things long term, too. And it's why I said yesterday that these huge power grabs that Trump is trying to accomplish could end up setting some good precedents. And the precedent that this court set yesterday is a good one. And we'll see if this decision ever makes to the Supreme Court and gets upheld there. But what this appeals court ruled for now is that courts do have the power and the authority to decide whether the president's abusing the clear meaning of the law and whether he's using a heightened situation to seize control of a state's National Guard. So that's a good thing. So then my question is, where do we go from here? I think it's pretty obvious that Trump is going to keep pushing this button, unfortunately. He's going to look for opportunities to seize the National Guard from other states as well. And it might be easy for him to do that under this ruling. It might only take protests that get out of hand where property damage occurs, or it might take people obstructing the work of ICE agents. But he's going to be looking for opportunities. And of course, his strategy is also to inflame situations to the point where people give him those opportunities, and then he's just going to do the same thing. He'll take over the National Guard, maybe in New York or Illinois or some other blue state, and then we'll go down the same path. And those decisions will also be handled in court. And at first, I'm just guessing that the courts are going to continue to show high deference to his decisions. But what the Ninth Circuit accomplished yesterday was to make it clear that at some point, courts do have the right to rein him in if he's obviously abusing the clear meaning of the law. He asked them to make him a dictator regarding the use of the National Guard, and they said no. Gavin Newsom posted this message after the ruling. Donald Trump is not a king and not above the law. Tonight, the court rightly rejected Trump's claim that he can do whatever he wants with the National Guard and not have to explain himself to a court. We will not let this authoritarian use of military soldiers against citizens go unchecked. So that's good. But now the fact remains that presidents do have a lot of power. And back to this horse that I tend to ride a lot, 80% of white evangelicals are responsible for forcing a really bad president on the nation. And now we're probably going to have to watch him push the limits of his power all summer long in various blue cities across the country. And I don't like that. And he'll continue to do a lot of damage until he pushes too far, I assume, and the courts rein him in. But that's a little bit unavoidable because people elected him. They did elect him, and that's why we need to elect better people in the long term to be president of the United States. We shouldn't have to fight these court battles over these checks and balances that we took for granted in the past. But here we are. So I'd say let's learn from these things. Let's find ways to use these sorts of events to educate people. In my case, I'm talking to a lot of conservative Christians to, just tell them why you don't elect a convicted criminal to such a powerful position. And thanks for listening.